Hey everyone, it's Chris from Elemental Cartomancy. Yes, your eyes do not deceive you. I've decided to make a wee channel, given into peer pressure, Simon and Hill, and decided to put this thing together. I plan on making another video quite soon, hopefully, just to kind of explain, the direction that I plan on going in, the kind of things that I'm planning on doing, because I do have some ideas in my head. But for now, just to quickly explain the title Elemental Cartomancy. So I've always kind of felt some sort of affinity with the elements, even not even just from a divination point of view, from the point of view of like sci-fi and those types of films. I've always kind of enjoyed how the elements are portrayed and stuff like that. So anyway, I thought what better way to start kick this channel off than to do a VR to Jen's Balanced Tarot's hashtag balanced deck scales. So, the first thing I'll start off by saying I don't have hundreds and hundreds of decks. I'm going to cheat a tiny wee bit. I'm going to use the same deck twice, and I'm also going to use a non-tarot for one of my answers. But I'm sure Jen won't mind. As I'm going through this, what I'll try and do is explain a bit about what the elements mean to me and why I've selected the particular decks that I've selected. So let's start off with air. So the first deck that I've selected for air is the Raven's Prophecy Tarot. The reason for this, well, it's kind of twofold. From an interacting with the cards point of view, I've found that it's one of these decks that, it goes by the standard Rider-Waite meanings, but the pictures are really quite different from the kind of standard pictures, the standard scenes that you would see, you know. It kind of, where I had maybe gotten a bit lazy with, reading the Rider-Waite before, this really forces me to think about things again, activate that old imagination and think, right, okay, well, how does that card mean that thing? So really, I've had to engage my brain really, which is all about, which is what air is all about. It's all about, the quest for understanding. And if you're wanting to look at it from a slightly more esoteric point of view, perhaps, building understanding whilst reducing the ego. So yeah, and the second reason is I've had my eye on this deck for years, yeah. I could never ever get over the garish orange borders, or what before I would have called garish. But I kind of just decided to get over myself and buy it. You can see that I've edged it in this nice orange colour that really, really goes nicely with the orange borders. So yeah, it's kind of forced me to go over myself in a way. So that for me is a bit of the air element also. The other deck that I've decided to pick for this is the only Tarot de Marseille deck that I own, which is the Triomphe de la Luna. So non-scenic pips obviously forces you to engage your, or at least for me, it forces me to really engage my mind and, really thinking about the numerology and the the elemental associations behind the cards. It's not so much about just looking at the scene and seeing what's happening and pulling meaning from that, which if you've seen any of the stuff that I've done with any other channels before, you'll know that I kind of draw from both. I use a bit of intuition and a bit of theory, I guess. So for me, the Tarot de Marseille really kind of makes me hone in on the use of the theory side of things. So that's why I've picked it for air, because again, it forces me to engage that kind of logical, theoretical kind of side of things a bit more. So those are my two air decks. Now, as I'm going through these, I'm conscious that the whole point was to pick two decks that are balancing each other off. Now, I am aware that I've not necessarily done that every time. I'm aware that this is more just me picking two decks that associate with that element. Hopefully, you know, I'll be able to put across where there is some balance between them, but yeah, that's not lost on me. So yeah, that was air. The next one I'll cover is water. And the first deck that I have to pick for water is my soul deck, the Lightseers Tarot. It's my soul deck, and I don't really have anything else, you know, I can't really elaborate on it any better than that. This is the deck that you see me read with the most. It's the one that I'm most comfortable with. It's the one that speaks to me the most. It's the one that speaks in the, you know, it can really tell me anything. You know, no matter what I'm needing to know, what kind of messages either I need or I need to portray to other people when I'm doing readings. It really isn't afraid to, you know, give me that tough love, warm hug, whatever it is needed, and I've really connected with it on every level, really. And for that reason, you know, that emotional connection that I have with it is the reason that I've selected it for water. The other water deck that I've selected is the Deviant Moon. For the very basic reason, not so much in how I interact with the cards, but this was bought for me by my partner, by my fiance, as a Christmas present. For that reason, it's always going to be really special to me. Doesn't matter whether I'm, you know, in a phase of reading with it, or whether I've not read with it in ages, whether I'm just not feeling it from a reader's point of view. This deck is always going to be really special to me. I'm always going to have that connection with it, and for that reason, I'm also putting this in the kind of water, as one of my water decks. So from water, why not go on to fire? And this is where I double up. So the Lightseers is also in the fire category. The reason being, fire is, the way I see fire, the way I would define the fire element, is that quest for purpose. You know, it's looking for that inspiration, that thing that really drives us. You know, it can be a project, it can be a short thing, it can be a long thing, it can be your job. It really doesn't matter. The whole point in it for me is it's something that gives you that feeling of purpose. You know, when your fire element is activated, it's usually because you've kind of engaged in something that is, you know, you feel as though, right, this is one of the reasons that I'm here. This is why I'm here. This was one of my kind of quests on this earth, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's the way I look at it. It's very much centered around purpose, and I kind of touched on it before, but the Lightseers kind of it was the first deck that I used to read on YouTube with Lucian and Dave from Cross Paths. It really kind of activated that sense of purpose for me, and it really lit that fire in my belly, and it kind of you know, it helped me realise how much I actually really enjoy doing this kind of thing with all of you guys. So for that reason, that is going into fire. And the other one is the Everyday Enchantment, which this was between fire and earth, but I'm putting in fire because this is a very kind of elemental based deck for me anyway, not just because of, you know, the colour coding and the borders, which I've kind of trimmed down now so you can really only see it in the bottom. But it kind of inspired me to create an elemental spread for myself. So ever since it's come into my life, I have kind of taken a lot of inspiration from it. And for that reason, it's one of my fire decks. So what have we not done yet? We've not done earth yet, so let's have a look at that. Now, the first deck that I've chosen for Earth is the Shadowlands, and I'm not prepared, I don't have it out of the box, so just bear with me whilst I try and get this out. But whilst I do that, I'll try and explain why I've decided to pick this one. This might come across as a bit weird, because again, it's not so much in, you know, how the cards come across to bear how I read them, but for me, the earth element, of course, is, you know, it's connecting everything to that material world, you know. So for Earth, I was thinking, right, I need to think of a deck that feels quite luxurious to me. You know, it feels quite fancy, and this deck, I don't know what it is. It's just I love a good borderless. I love a good color palette. The lovely gold gilding around the edges, and I'm just, you know, in love with the backgrounds. The backs of the cards as well. Everything about it, I just love when I've got this deck in my hands. So it's a very kind of tangible experience for me. So that's kind of the reason why I've chosen this one for Earth. The other one I've chosen for a very different reason. It was my first ever tarot. I know a lot of people aren't too keen on this version of the Rider-Waite-Smith, but it's the original Rider-Waite tarot deck. One with these backs. Simple reason being, I just feel as though it takes me home. It brings me back to zero. It's where I started, you know. If I'm feeling a bit uninspired by the tarot in general, if I'm feeling like I don't really want to do anything like that, this always kind of lights that spark in me again. It just kind of, you know, when I work with this, I just feel as though I've come back home, I've come back to my roots. So that for me is a very kind of earth type interaction, and that's why I've chosen that for Earth. And that just leaves Spirit. So this is where I've chosen a non-tarot for one of my decks. And to be honest, I've cheated a wee bit further because this is two decks in one. Talked about this recently on Robin's channel, Toadstool Tarot, and this is Soul Cards, and Soul Cards 1 and 2, I've put them both together. So Spirit for me is one of the more, you know, it's not so clear or it's not so universal what we all mean by spirit. For me, it can take on a couple of different things. Spirit is where all four elements come together as one, you know. It's where they all kind of meet in the middle, and how we interact with them all and combine them all as we go about our daily lives. That for me is kind of takes on the meaning of spirit, but also spirit is just, it's your reason for being here. It's your purpose in life. It's how we interact with the world, with the rest of the world outside us. It's our legacy. It's the stamp that we put on the world. You know, when I'm dead and buried, if people ever talk about me, you know, or remember Chris, he did X, Y, Z, to me that's kind of taken on the meaning of spirit. You know, it's your raison d'etre, if you want to put it that way. Soul Cards 1 and 2. So it's kind of like that alpha omega idea when it comes to the elements. So when we're talking about bringing all the elements together as one, I think Kelly at The Truth and Story did a live VR to this, and I really liked the way she put it. She thinks of it as source. So it's kind of like where everything starts from, and the way I took it to mean was where everything ends. It's kind of like the alpha and omega. So this kind of encompasses that, and that it's not an elemental deck. You know, each card doesn't have an elemental association, so it's not as aligned to the elements in that way. But the meanings that you take from this, obviously your unconscious translates that into kind of very elemental meanings. So for example, I talked about this particular card on Robin's channel, and it wasn't on purpose that this was there. It's just kind of the way I've cut the cards there, it's come up. But this one has got, someone's kind of sitting in a dark corner. It looks as though she's either contemplating a rose or she's sculpting it, just depending on the way you look at the card. If you look at the rose and the meaning of the rose, there's beauty in the rose and the petals, but there's also pain in the thorns. So it really takes on that kind of watery meaning for me, that kind of emotion and emotional pain almost, and your journey to get over that emotional pain, and how you go on and use that to further your life experience and whatnot. So there wasn't a natural intention for that to be a water card, but for me that really hits me like a wave, So that is one spirit deck, and it's just, they're called soul cards. I was going to say that I just feel as though they speak to my soul, but of course that's the intention. They are soul cards. So yeah, there's that, and then I've also selected the Marielle Tarot for this. So I've got the first edition, but I've trimmed it in case you're interested. The reason that I selected Marielle for this, Marielle for me is one of those tarots that's very kind of macrocosmic. It's not talking so much about everyday mundane lives. I wouldn't pick up Marielle if I was worried about my investments and I was wanting to ask the tarot, or look for advice on, should I invest today or should I wait a month, or it's not for me a deck that I would use for those kind of everyday mundane type questions. But I don't mean mundane to demean those type of topics, because they're they're important to everybody, right? We all have our macrocosmic and our microcosmic lives, and our outer. But for me, this is very kind of macrocosmic. I'm trying to think of like an example. Just when you look at some of the meanings of these cards, when you look at what the intention was when Marie White created it, some of the meanings are really kind of, for me, difficult to grasp. I've really got to read it a couple of times to pick up on what she's saying. But she really goes, the really deep, I think that's what I'm trying to say, really, really deep meaning cards. And yeah, for that reason, I put them into the category of spirit. So yeah, those are my choices for the 5 elements. Those are the decks that I've chosen. Like I say, I'm not so sure that I've kind of achieved the whole purpose, which was to balance 2 decks against each other. But I thought, as a starter for 10, on a channel that calls itself Elemental Cartomancy, why not start off by doing a VR to this amazing hashtag that is all about the elements and the decks that you use for each element. So hopefully this has been an okay video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much if you've watched it. And yeah, I'll hopefully see you all and speak to you all soon. Bye bye.